Welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or a novice, there's something here for everyone. I'm Allie.
And I'm Liz, and together we're your hosts.
Join us as we dive into the world of technology implementation and management.
From hearing expert insights to exploring inspiring stories of tech impact, we cover it all.
We'll interview technology users, configurators, and leaders where we discuss driving effective tech adoption in businesses.
Tune in to laugh, learn, and leverage the power of technology. The future is tech-driven. Let's navigate it together.
Dan Fine, what a guy.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. Very inspirational. And I feel like we could have talked to him for like a whole nother hour. He had a lot to share.
For sure. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So remind me again, how did you cross paths with him?
Yeah, so Dynamics for Good, which is a community, like an organization that Lucas Diaz and Ludier Consulting had started. And so they brought UORF in and they did the technology implementation for them, and then TechFluent as part of Dynamics for Good. So that's how we connected, and that's where the overlap is.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you made that connection with him too, because it was such a great topic. Like, I know we didn't talk as much tech with him in this one, but I almost like that because it's really highlighting like the types of organizations that use these tech, and then like Power Platform Dynamics, all that stuff, and then really just highlighting what they do, and they have such a good cause.
Yeah. Yeah. And like talking about like the impact technology can make on such a like critical, like there's just such a need there, and then how they're able to leverage it to help with the cause. What was your kind of biggest takeaway from it, would you say?
Honestly, just the whole mission that they're doing was a big takeaway for me because it's nothing that I had ever thought of before. And we talked about this a little bit with him in the episode, even, right? Of like animals being displaced by war wasn't anything I ever thought of. But then he also explained that the reason we don't really think of it is because wars that are more prominent in like the Middle East don't have animals being displaced because they don't have as many pets. So I guess just that what overall of like how the Ukrainian animals are being displaced and why rabies could be an issue and why they're trying to spay and neuter all these pets to prevent the spread. What about for you? What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, definitely didn't ever realize it was a problem either. Like, I'm really glad I learned about it, and I feel like I've been telling more and more of my friends and family, like, you need to pay attention to this. Like, this matters, and I'm a pet lover, a dog lover, and like a lot of the people I know are. So it's like definitely pulls at your heartstrings, like tugs at your heartstrings. And I thought it was just so interesting why. I mean, like our generation definitely has never seen this as an outcome of any of the wars that have been part of our time period, and we haven't seen anything like this since he mentioned Britain in World War II the last time that we had a similar problem. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Like, I think I liked learning the tidbits about dogs. Like, I didn't know that. So they're using AI facial recognition to track the dogs back to the pictures that their owners upload, and that I didn't know that the dog's nose was their fingerprint. So they're taking the close-ups of the nose, and I actually really enjoyed learning new tidbits about dogs that I wasn't aware of before.
Yeah, and even his comments about how like one day to them is a week. It's like we've all heard that a dog year is like 7 human years, right? But I never extrapolated that down to be like, well, that means one day is 7 days, and so one day is 1 week. And you have two dogs, I have two dogs, and now I'm looking at them differently too, of like, okay, so when I board you for a weekend or have someone else watch you for a weekend, it truly does feel like we were gone for forever. Like we were gone for a month to them, you know?
Yeah. And you can't communicate when you're coming back either. So it's like they don't know. So yeah.
I mean, I tell them every time, but I don't think they understand.
I don't know if they do. But yeah, I mean, I encourage everyone to stick through the whole episode. Like, I think it's the hardest topic we've ever covered on the hot dish before, like the heaviest topic. It's definitely a little out of our norm, but it's just so important, I think, to have the awareness of it and to help spread the word, because it is, I mean, Dan made it very clear that it's something that's completely fixable if enough resources are put into it.
Absolutely. And I think just the heaviness of the episode too, you can pick it out when we get into the episode here in a little bit, I think everybody will hear you and I being speechless, which doesn't happen often. But then there's some times in there where he would tell us something. And for those of you who are going to watch this on video, you can watch Liz and my expression just kind of like, I'm absorbing this and I don't know what to say.
It was hard. Yeah, definitely had to process after. Definitely cried when I watched the trailer, cried after trying to explain it to my husband. Like, it is hard. And it was hard, yeah, to really comprehend the full situation, like in the moment, on the spot. I'll add too, like, I don't feel like American news is covering the war in Ukraine as much as they were in the beginning. Like, it's, what are we going on year 3 now? And there's so many other things happening in the world. But I also like intake a lot of my news through podcasts and like audio format. And so I don't get all the visuals, and watching the trailer, it's not just about the dogs and the cats. Like, you're seeing the cities, the communities, the buildings, the people that are all impacted by the war too. And I think bringing those visuals like front and center was really impactful for me to just be reminded of like how bad it is and that this is still going on. Because I think it's easy to kind of, I don't know, become numb to it or forget about it because we're over here and it's not directly impacting us and it's like not in our face every day.
Exactly. And sometimes the graphics you see are of like, bombs or armies specifically and stuff like that. And the graphics that they were showing were more of, what about the people that are still there? Like, not everyone can leave. There's a lot of people who are still there. Dan went over to Ukraine himself and had some pretty heavy stories that he'll tell throughout this podcast episode as well. And I think just all of that together, number one, reminded me of how grave the situation is and what's happening, and also gave some perspective into how the Ukrainians he met felt about the conflict and what's going on.
Definitely. Made me grateful to be here and be safe, and like definitely have felt extra appreciation for my dogs and like our safety together, and just that it's not something we have to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, Liz, I think should we toss it over, and I hope everybody enjoys this episode, and like Liz said, listen until the end. It's totally worth it. Dan's such a great guy. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Dynamics Hot Dish. This week, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Dan Fine from UWARF, and he is here to tell us all about what he does for UWARF, what UWARF stands for. We'll start there in just a moment, how you started going down this path, and then how this ties into a Dynamics and Power Platform podcast, right? So we're going to talk about all these great things today. But Dan, before we get rolling, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background?
Oh, okay. You bet. Yeah. So my name is Dan Fine. I kind of split my time between Vancouver, British Columbia, and Seattle, Washington. And that's actually because of my Microsoft background, or my partner as a Microsoft partner. So I started a Microsoft Dynamics partner, I think around 2000, and was one of the early AX guys, like on AX 3.0 when Microsoft bought it. Actually, they bought Navision, which then they got AX 3.0 after that, and watched them upgrade it to 4.0 in 2009. And oh my God, you can see what happened to my hair. I had before that. Yeah. So I was a Microsoft partner. We focused on AX and Great Plains, so GP. We did a lot of Dynamics GP, and we did CRM. We started with 1.2 on CRM, and we decided to hold off until 3.0 came out and until it got a little more mature. But we had the largest Dynamics practice in the Northwest. So we had about 55 employees when I was running it. It was called Find Solutions. And I'm going to guess we had a little over 500 clients. So even big ones like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that used GP and then moved to AX or F&O. And we just had a lot of fun doing that. And I ended up buying a Dynamics practice in Canada because I wanted to move up here. And what happened there was we were running our practice up here and in Seattle. And then Encore, kind of a larger Dynamics practice in Canada, purchased us. And I ended up working for them for several years until I retired a few years back.
Well, happy retirement. I'm sure it feels good after that long road that you've been through.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Get it to
It
spend a
sounds
lot of
like
time on the trails.
you've been keeping busy though, too, in retirement.
Yeah, Liz, it was so interesting because I was out just doing trail clearing. Like I had a machete and I'm out there on the trails, just cleaning the trails. And I thought, wow, this is not really good for my brain. I mean, it was good for my heart, good for the fresh air, good for to do something good, but
Mhm.
it wasn't really super fulfilling for you know, running a dynamics practice, as you guys know, is tough. It's hard to
Yes.
put in ERP. It's hard to put in CRM. It's hard to manage employees, and it's even harder to manage clients. And so I needed something a little more challenging than clearing trails, though I loved
I'm
it.
It's good to have a blend, a mix. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and CRM and ERP implementations, they're complex. There's a lot to that. So that's definitely understandable. So at what point did you get involved, or like how did UORF come about? And can you tell us about UORF?
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And it's kind of a funny name. And, we named it like on the spot. So we didn't really think through the branding and the name. And we never thought it would last. And we never thought anything really long term about it. But UWARF stands for Ukraine War Animal Relief Fund. And what happened is that I was actually kind of crossing the field, which is where all the dogs meet. And, if you guys both have dogs, I've seen them walking
Yep.
around. And so, when you're out talking to other dog owners, you don't even actually get to find out what the person's name is, but you know all about their dogs, right?
Oh yeah.
Totally. I
Oh,
know
Oh yeah.
all the dogs in my neighborhood and on our
yeah,
walks, but the people's names are really hard to remember.
that's right. Like there's Betty,
You're like
there's, but you don't remember any of the
Lucy's
people's
mom,
names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leo's mom. Yeah.
Well, I was at the, playing with our dog, and there was a guy over there, and he had a boxer, and it turned out that the guy was Ukrainian. And so we
Oh.
started talking about kind of early days when Russia was acting up. And he was telling me more about what was happening in Ukraine. Now, I had been to Ukraine in 2014, right after Crimea fell. And I was in downtown Kyiv when they had flowers out and everything for the people that died during that revolution, during Russia's invasion and takeover of Crimea. The reason I was there was because I had met a partner at Convergence, an old Convergence, and we were using them pretty much full time for AX development and F&O. And they were really talented. These Ukrainians were really, really good at it. So I knew a little bit about Ukraine. I knew a lot of. I worked with those people for over a decade, and became good friends with them as well as partners. So I was very interested in what he was saying. And then I had read a book called The Elephant Whisperer. And at the end of that, there was a guy in Africa that started collecting elephants that they're otherwise going to be shot. But at the end of the book, they talked about what he did after he had set up his elephant sanctuary, and he went to Baghdad to take care of the elephants during the Iraq War, because the elephants, especially with all the bombs and missiles dropping, are very emotional animals, and it turns out most animals are, and the missiles and the bombs that are dropping so often, it just causes so much stress. So he went there to help out at the zoo. And so when I was talking to this Ukrainian fellow who happens to be an Oracle guy, he was telling me about this, and I thought, you know what, I should go help at the zoo in Kyiv. And so I started trying to make phone calls. It was really hard because the war just started and all the communications were down. You couldn't get a hold of anyone. I finally got a hold of someone at the zoo who said, you know what, we've moved our big animals to Poland. We don't need help right now. We've got a veterinarian. We've got everything we need. But the animals need help, other animals. And I was like, okay. So I found a sanctuary on the border, and we have a friend, Tana, and she and I decided, she's the one that gave me that book, The Elephant Whisperer, and she raises guide dogs and Sinai dogs. So she and I got on a plane 2 weeks later, made our way to the border, and we spent a month rescuing 70 dogs. Some of them were pretty hurt, guts opened up, lost limbs, ears blown off. I mean, all kinds of stuff. We rescued and took care of 70 dogs, 22 puppies, and 8 cats for a month. And I slept in the kitchen, the sanctuary. And, my job then was really just like walking the dogs and taking care of their, the cages, and cleaning them and grooming them and bathing them and showing them love. So that's kind of how it all started. We got there, and what's interesting is you're both dog owners. So, when you're walking a dog by yourself, you have a lot of time to think. And so I'm walking, like 70 dogs, and I'm working, 18 to 20 hours a day walking them, because if you don't walk them, they poop. And when one poops, they all poop. Then you have to clean all the cages. So it's an incentive to get them out. And I was walking them and I was thinking about it. And we've been volunteering also to pop-up warehouse where supplies were coming in for the animals, cages and food and, vaccines and all kinds of things, flea and tick controls. So while we were there, we noticed that this supply chain was completely broken. So you couldn't, shelters over there, and also just group homes, like grannies that would just start taking dogs and cats in. And I'll describe in a second why this was all happening. But they would throw up on Telegram, or they'd throw up on Facebook or Instagram that they needed food or needed this. And then some of them got like mountains of food and others got nothing. And so we looked at that and said, well, there's an opportunity to try to fix this supply chain. And maybe we can do that with the Power Platform and with CRM and with D365. So we contacted some friends, Ludia Consulting, and some friends back in the States to help us build that out. But let's talk about the bigger problem. I want to get to that, because why is this all happening? So Russia invades Ukraine like crazy. Why are they doing that? I don't really understand. But 8 million Ukrainians, according to the UN, had to leave like right away from their homes. There's only like 40 million in the whole country, but 8 million had to go. Bombs and missiles are dropping every minute and a half. Tanks are rolling in, gunfire, everything. And you can't fly out. It's a no-fly zone, so no planes are flying. You can't really drive out because they've blown up the bridges and there's bombs on the roads. There's, they mined the roads. And so the buses aren't working. So the only really way out is by train. And at that time, the train wasn't designed to hold 8 million people all at once. And so they said no animals. So these people had to make a choice. And they left over 1 million animals alone. Now, I don't blame them. If you have children and you have, that's their choice. I mean, 1.5 million, the 8 million people had to leave, and bombs are dropping, and I've seen their villages and seen what's happened to them. They had to go. And so there are a lot of animals just at the train station or just walking around the neighborhoods, and in some villages a lot more than people. We've been to villages where you see more dogs and cats than you see people, because they've just bombed out these villages. So then the other problem that happened, so as we were going, we decided to fix that supply chain and do this Dynamics 365 program. So we built that with Ludia, we got that up and running, and we did it in Ukrainian and English with maps from Inagic and all kinds of really cool technology, right? And then I was sitting with this guy, Gary Baxter from Dogs and Homes, and we were actually having a beer at the end of the day, and he's from the UK, and he said, what would be cool? And I said, what's that? And he said, if we could do facial recognition on the dogs. And so these Ukrainians that have gone to Italy or Germany or France or wherever they are in the EU, because the EU opened for them, they could just, show a picture of, their dog or their cat, and everyone's got, I turned my phone off for this interview, but, everyone's got a picture of their dog or cat, and they can upload it into this Power Platform. And then using AI and facial recognition, because what we do is we take 5 photos. We take a picture of the face, and the nose is like the fingerprint. And then you take a side picture, so you get AI figures out the breed, the size, the markings, the weight, all that. And then we take a picture of the front and the operation to prove that we've done a sterilization on them. And then we take a picture of their passport, because we give them a passport. And we also use called a Go chip, which is a new technology for microchips. And it actually allows someone with Bluetooth or another device to walk into a field, and you can see which animals have been vaccinated, which ones have been sterilized, what vaccines they've had, when. All of it goes up in the cloud. It's a very cool, and you can also put receivers up to track them if you wanted to, but we don't do that. Anyway, so we thought, let's use technology with this thing. But the biggest problem that we found out was that pre-war, Ukraine had a problem with low sterilization rates, like spaying and neutering their pets. And it just isn't a thing in Eastern Europe. They just don't do it, for whatever reason. So now this becomes a real problem, because now you have 1 million new pets on the street, unsupervised, and they're making babies. And when they make babies, it goes like COVID. So 2 dogs have a litter of 6. They have a litter of 6. And in 6 years, you have 67,000 dogs. So we have this huge problem. So we built this supply chain thing with Ludia and did the Power Platform and all that field service stuff, or not field service, just the D365 stuff to manage the shelters and supply chains. And then we met these 2 Ukrainian women that we sponsored, that were going out and rescuing dogs and cats. And they had borrowed a van, and they were just going out, and we'd give them food, and they'd take it out to the shelters, and they'd bring us back dogs and cats, which we tried to find homes for. So I'm talking to Christina, one of them, and she's an architect, and she says, Dan, you are missing the point. Like, I'm talking about the shelters, the supply chain, and using all my D365 and my Microsoft, background about, how do we fix this problem? She's like, you're missing the point. And I'm like, yeah, what am I missing here? And she said, you're missing the point because it's the sterilization. We have to fix it there, because we're not going to be able to feed all these animals, and it's going to cause a lot of suffering if we don't sterilize. And so I'm like, okay. So that's when UWARF turned into more a sterilization mission, and we started going into villages that were destroyed, the ones that need it the most, where the animals are wandering around, and we would set up in a blown up building with veterinarians from Ukraine, and we would start doing like 100 dogs and cats a day. And we ended up doing 8,206 in the last 5 missions. But then one more problem came up. So I'm over there doing this, and then I find out that Ukraine is also a very high rabies country.
Oh, no.
Now, rabies, I mean, if you think COVID's bad at a 30% or whatever, death rate. Rabies is 100% fatal. And so what's happening is all these animals are multiplying. They're looking for food because their owners are either under the rubble or gone. And so they're going into the woods. And that's where the wolves and the foxes are that are carrying the rabies. And then we have another problem there, which is they outlawed hunting, because the last thing you want to do is go into the woods with a gun where there are thousands of landmines and soldiers and go hunting with a gun. So they've outlawed it, which means the wolves and the foxes are now multiplying with the rabies, and these cats and dogs and puppies and kittens are going into the woods looking for food, get infected, and now rabies is spread to almost every major city in Ukraine. And they don't have the hemoglobins and the treatments and the prevention to take care of this. So we are talking about a human problem now, not just an animal problem. And so that's become the mission of UWARF: sterilization, vaccination. Let's try to eliminate the growth exponential, and let's try to stop rabies from spreading. Because those animals will also cross the border and go to Romania and Bulgaria and Poland, and where they don't care. They don't go walk up to the border crossing and go, here's my passport. They just cross wherever they want. And really, unfortunately, the number one target for rabies is children, 55%, because they're small to the ground. They hear puppy, they get bit in the face and the neck. And you don't even have to get bit. You just get drooled on and you'll catch rabies. Yeah, and we've had 2 doctors get bit. One was prepared, and had the vaccine in advance. The other one didn't. So he spent months in the hospital. And really, unfortunately, right now, you watched our trailer, Christina, the gal that is my partner over that runs the shelter, does most of our dog catching. She got called in to rescue a mama dog who had 8 puppies. And so she went in to do it. And it's drool. She wiped her eye with the drool. The dog died 3 days later. Got tested for rabies, and now she's been getting injections. And yesterday, the day before, she wrote me and said, please be nervous for me because now her face is frozen. And it might flatten out like a stroke victim. And so they've been doing some brain MRIs for her and her nerve inflammation. So this is really hard stuff, and we need technology to fix it. So we the idea is to use field service to be able to go out and use Dynamics 365 field service to track all the vaccinations and sterilizations, and also use the Azure database and AI to be able to do this and try to really grow this thing. But it's going to be, a lot of heavy lifting. So sorry about rambling on and on, but that's kind of the scope of UWARF.
No, thank you for that overview. I just am listening to you very intently because I love what you're trying to say. And, we said it before, Liz and I are both animal lovers too. I think, or my sister-in-law actually works for the Minnesota Department of Health and has been involved with the rabies team there for a long time. And she'll still do like the rabies phones on weekends and things like that occasionally. So we've had conversations about rabies, and it's scary enough around here. And it's people finding kittens in barns and bats and everything else too. And for what you said with the statistic of how more prevalent it is in Ukraine, I can imagine that it's a huge problem that has to be solved. And how did you find people to do both of those giant tasks? Like, how did you get resources to have people that can sterilize the animals and distribute the rabies vaccines? Because both of those are huge. You're doing a lot of it, and I'm sure it takes a lot of involvement.
It's a lot of work, but here's the good news is that, when we're over there, it's interesting. First of all, there are no men around because the men are all fighting the war.
Oh,
so it's actually the women that are saving Ukraine. And that's what we say over there. And so I work with a lot of women over there. And what they do is they've organized a lot of volunteers. So we'll go into a village and they'll find animal lovers or people that, run shelters, or even the grannies that collect the dogs and take care of them, even while occupied. They still feed the animals, even with Russian helicopters flying overhead. They still go out and feed them. It's absolutely unbelievable what these people do. I've got to describe something first. I'm sorry. Why is this a problem now? And why haven't we heard about this before? Because we've had lots of wars, right? And I didn't realize this until, you go back and you start doing the research. All our wars have been Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, you name it, now Gaza, right? The difference is that those are Muslim countries. And in the Muslim religion, they're not really big on pets. Pets are not part of the... That's right. And in fact, in Iran, dogs are outlawed. You can't walk your dog without getting fined. It's a crime. So all those countries that, we've had wars in, animal ownership is at the bottom of the list in the world. Ukraine is number 14 in the world in animal ownership, but number 46 in human population. They love their animals. I mean, some people there have 9 dogs. I mean, it's crazy how many. So that's why this is kind of the first time we've heard about this in a war, is the animals are actually prevalent in the country. And so while we're there, there's so many animal lovers. There's lots of volunteers that want to help. So we organize volunteers, and there's a lot of Ukrainian veterinarians that are just out of work. So we can put 200 veterinarians, but the one issue is we can't take a lot of the males close to the front, because the Army will enlist them. So we have to take female veterinarians to the front, and there are, just for whatever reason, not as many female veterinarians as there are male veterinarians in Ukraine. So we have some female veterinarians that are working a lot in the front, and they're working, in darkness with headlamps, with no gas, no electricity, no clean running water, and sometimes just outhouses.
Well, it sounds dangerous too. I mean, you told Christina's story of the rabies, but there's still bombings and like landmines and all that too. So it's not a safe, secure environment to be working in.
No, it isn't. And you hear shelling all the time when you're working, and the air raid sirens go off, and you just continue your work. And it is crazy. And they've been sending. Russia's been on the offensive even more recently in some of the villages that we've been to, and they send back videos of the shelling and the bombs, and I've seen some of that as well myself. It is horrendous what's happening over there. So we use local charities over there to work with. So work with Christina is just kind of her own thing. She's her own powerhouse. And then we have a White Angel, and we have a few others that we've worked with, UA Animals, and we'll organize with them. And then we'll also use social media. to say we're coming in, and they use Signal and Telegraph to spread the word. And then we'll put posters up in the Central Market that we're doing this. And then people come out and just help. They'll help us catch dogs, and they'll help us, clean the cages and walk the dogs and make sure they have water. And it's pretty fascinating. It's amazing to see how they all come together.
Christina looks like this absolute superhero too. I was watching her in the trailer, and I should say the trailer for War Tales, which is the documentary that we're working on. I don't think we've mentioned that specifically yet in this podcast, and we'll circle back to that. But Christina just looks like a powerhouse, like you said. She's like chasing down dogs, she's grabbing them, she's loving that. You can tell she's got like a passion for this, that she's got a passion for her home in Ukraine, and she also has a passion for the animals too. And we'll send her our best wishes as well with what's happened. And
me too. I'm really worried about her. And she is the toughest person I've ever met. She's like a GI Jane, and just a like Arnold Schwarzenegger and every superhero you can imagine. And she is tough. She is very tough, but she's also a sweet person. And she cares so much about those animals. Like, she went in, and they, when she first got rabies, and she got an injection, and they said, you need to stay in the clinic. And she's like, no, I have to go back and take care of the dogs, because she's got 120 dogs at the shelter. And so she left the clinic after 2 hours to go back to the shelter and work. And I've told her, please, you need to pay attention to your health. I know someone's got to take care of the dogs, but we got to take care of her. She's a tough person. She's a little crazy, She's a little crazy.
In a good way, right?
She showed that swan. I don't know if you saw it. And she's like, I'm like, what are you doing with a swan? She goes,
I saw that. Okay.
I was wondering what that was. I was like, there's a bird in here.
And I went, oh my God. And so we took it into the vets. We were down south, near Dnipro. And our vets were like, yeah, we're not swan experts. You got to take that to Kyiv. So I ended up driving that freaking bird 9.5 hours through the night, past curfew, into Kyiv. And then all the hotels were closed down, but I was banging on a window, and they let me in. I left the swan in the van in the morning, had breakfast with it. I Googled and found out that they like spinach and carrots. And then I took a little dog bowl. I wasn't prepared for the swan, and I filled it with water, trying to get it to drink. But when I came back, it was sitting on the dog bowl, like this big swan.
It wanted to swim in the water.
And I took it to this vet that specialized in swans, and I took it in. She didn't speak English. I don't speak Ukrainian. And so finally someone just said, it's okay, you can leave, we'll take care of the swan. And it's often a swan sanctuary.
I have another question for you, because, you were on the ground.
Before you move on, did the swan live? Did the swan recover?
Oh, yes, it did.
Okay.
So the veterinarian said, we've got it, we're taking care of it. And it actually went to a swan sanctuary.
Oh, that's nice.
So, really, really nice. Yeah. And we try to follow up on a lot of animals, but it's very difficult, because a lot of these animals we pick up, we don't know what their background is. We don't know where they're from or who their owner is. They don't have microchips. We got one at a military checkpoint and his name, the soldiers, we were heading down south, and they said, we've got this dog for you. And we said, well, because the dogs go to the military checkpoints because the soldiers will feed them. And then also they keep fires going and stuff and keep warm. So we said, we'll catch them on the way back. So when we came back around 11 o'clock at night, and they said this dog's name was Buro, which means rat eater. And it's named after a nomadic tribe in Russia and Siberia. And we said, why do you call him that? And he looked like a sheepdog almost, but he wasn't sheepdogish. And it turned out that they found him eating Russian soldier corpses because he was so hungry. And that's why I call him Buro. So we got him. He was filthy. I was first afraid to put my fingers in his cage, but but we fed him, and he turned out to be this super playful. He was someone's pet at some point. Super playful, super wonderful dog. We had him operated on, and then I just kept him with me for like a week because he was so much fun. He rode in the van with us all the time. And then now he's got a new name, Neuron, and they send us photos and videos of him, and he's doing just great. He's put on some more weight. He's all cleaned up. So I love when we do hear the follow-up stories of these dogs, like some that were picked up in the Kherson flood, or I mean, just it's amazing.
And you're adopting out these animals all across Europe, correct?
Trying that Christina really
Okay.
does that. I mean, like my focus was really sterilization and vaccination. That's what I want to, but she was like, we need a shelter, and then she drives them everywhere. So I lost count. I mean, I think we've adopted at least 800 out. I don't know, maybe more, but we can't take them all in. So sometimes we take them back to like where they are living with their buddies and release them. And then if we think we can adopt them, we'll take them to the shelter. And then it's really weird over there. It's like almost like doing drug deals. You're driving up and down the highway at night and you meet these people and they're like, we'll take this dog, you take that dog. And they're like adopting. I saw these grannies who are taking care of them, but they find ways to get them homes and stuff. It's really
Well, and
interesting.
I can imagine too, like how you mentioned that people had to leave their dogs behind to leave Ukraine, is I can't imagine it's easy to try to adopt them out in Ukraine right now because people are still trying to fight for their own lives, right? And they're trying to, with the air raids and things, I'm sure people are losing their homes and they're not sure where they're going to sleep sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's got to be a hard battle.
Yeah, and the economy has fallen. Like their dollar is just so weak, and the unemployment is through the roof, and a lot of the men are fighting. So it is hard to get the dogs adopted out. But it's amazing how many people do. We had one dog. I think her name was Lucy. I'm not. I have to remember what her name was, but we've got her from the shelter, and Christina and I took her to Odessa, and it was this old couple who lived by the sea, the Black Sea, and they had like grape vineyards, and old man kept giving me grapes, and I'm like I can't eat any more grapes, but their dog had died and they adopted this dog, and we let the dog run around the yard, and then pretty soon it just jumped up on the bench with this old couple, and I remember taking a picture and like, oh, they're so sweet, so sweet.
Well, and you know what people say, we don't deserve dogs, right? They have unconditional love, and I think that's wonderful. But I'll ask
Yeah.
you this question just because it came to mind as you're talking about this. If the dogs are getting driven all over Europe, like are any of them getting airlifted to the States? Like can anyone from the US adopt these dogs, or is there any way to
Unfortunately
okay.
not. CDC has strictly outlawed Ukrainian dogs and cats, and so has Canada. And it's the
Okay.
rabies thing. And it's
Mm,
actually a lot of the, with the EU. And so that's kind of my dream of what will happen with this. But the EU has very strict laws about rabies and about animals and transportation. So the EU, we know that Ukraine wants to get into the European Union, and we know the European Union wants Ukraine, right? And it's going to take years for them to do that. But there are real strict laws about animal transport and about rabies. So we think that someone in the EU might like wake up and go, wow, this is a problem. Maybe we should solve this now and then try to solve it later. And the problem with later is what's called culling, and certain countries still do it. It's CULLING. Basically, it's a mass slaughter. So, if all these animals start to grow and grow and grow and exponentially grow, if people that understand math and compounding numbers will get it, there'll be so many animals there. And the only way, like when they start to reconstruct Ukraine, is they'll have to cull those animals. And the last big one was in World War II. Britain did 750,000 animals, dogs and cats. But there's still countries that do it, and it's kind of a backwards practice because it doesn't solve rabies. But that's what they'll be forced to do, and the expense of that, and the goodwill, and the bad PR is going to be horrific. Or they could fix it now very easily with the unemployed veterinarians and all these volunteers, and it'd be done. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, how do you get legislation to go through like that over there, though? I mean, especially in a time of war, do you get pushback from people who are going, oh, they're just dogs, we have bigger problems on our hands? Or how do you convince people, especially the EU, that this is something
Yeah.
that they need to be focusing on? Are you doing that? I don't know. I have so many questions. I don't know
Yeah,
how
well,
that
it's not going to
works.
happen in America because they're stalled on just even giving them bullets. I mean, these idiots in Washington D.C. can't figure out that, Russia. I mean, even Ronald Reagan fought against Russia. Like let's wake up here. This is a problem, and Russia's not going to stop with Ukraine. So someone in Washington D.C.'s got to wake up and slap these guys around and slap some sense into them. But Over in the EU, they're way more sensitive to it because Russia's at their doorstep, and all these problems are at their doorstep. So they're more highly alert to it. And what we're hoping is this documentary that you mentioned, War Tales, we're hoping that that will show like on the BBC. We've started talking with them and some other places in Europe, and people in the European Union will see this and go, this is an issue we need to take care of. And we're talking, this is not hard and it's not costly. I mean, I talked to one lady because Christina wants to build out her dog shelter, right? Her animal shelter. And so, you know, I got all into my little entrepreneurial hat and I contacted us and we started a Microsoft, you know, Teams place to start writing all the stuff down and how we're going to do it and make technology use it. And then I talked to an architect who designs dog shelters. She said she's doing one in California for $29 million to build one dog shelter. We need $14 million to fix this entire problem in Ukraine. So about half the price of one dog shelter in California can take care, because you know you can do these animals for, I mean, if you do them in quantity, you can do them for less than $30 a piece, and things are cheap over there. And so, you know, and that's the other thing, we don't take stuff with us, we buy it all over there because it's so much cheaper.
And are there actually enough veterinarians available to do that many procedures too? Like it's really just the funding that's the blocker?
Well, funding and organization. So, you know, you need some people that can put the right it's got to be like a McDonald's, right? And you need something like D365 field service, and you need to be able to get the vaccines and all the medical supplies to the right people at the right time. Also hard to do it in a place that's at war, because, you know, supply chains are broken and transportation is hard and you're dealing with all kinds of issues. But it's absolutely possible and can be done. And there's over 200 veterinarians that are looking for work right now because people can't afford to pay them. So you can employ them, you know, and say, look, you need to do somewhere around 50 animals a day, and we can set up in these locations, and we have the dog catchers, we can bring the animals to you, and you can deploy that for $14 million, and that would solve this problem.
Wow, that's crazy. How are you guys taking donations? Are you taking donations? I feel like this is a good time to have a call to action where if people want to support UWARF, is there anywhere they can go to do that?
There is a GoFundMe,
Okay.
but it's not, and donations would be great. I'm not going to refuse donations, but it's not our main purpose. Our main purpose is really to get awareness around this issue and open people's eyes and get people talking about it, and hopefully someone will do something about it. Because, you know, frankly, like we've run these missions and we did over 8,000 dogs and cats, but that's just really a drop in the bucket, and almost like why do it at all? You know, I mean, it's like COVID, right? If everyone doesn't get vaccinated and wear a mask, you're going to have millions of people die, which is what happened. So I think the same thing, which is this is a much bigger problem, and donations are wonderful and they help, and I can use the money to help support the shelter, feed dogs, sterilize dogs, but we really need people to like wake up to this huge issue. And for us here in North America, it's not that big of an issue because it's so far away and it doesn't super affect us. But for people in Europe, it's going to be, and there's going to be a lot of children that suffer from this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the bigger point, Ellie. You had asked, like, do you ever get pushback around, like, these are just animals, these are just dogs and cats, but it is with the rabies element, like, it's very much a human problem. And, like, I think even if you're not an animal lover, like, you can get behind that as an issue, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this has got so many issues kind of tied together. And yet what I love about it is it's super solvable. It's like this isn't a challenge like, gosh, how are we going to fix this? Like climate change. This is something that's pretty easy to solve, and someone just has to do it. And that'd be great.
So you're talking about awareness. I guess for most of our listeners are in the US. We do have a few Europeans that listen, but most of the people probably hearing this are in the US. So other than donations and awareness, how else can someone in the US get involved and support the cause? Or is it really just spreading the word and awareness? Is that the biggest thing?
You know, because everyone are like the three of us, I can tell, you know, I have a bond with other animal lovers. I feel like I'm a dog. I'm part dog. It's part of my, you know, like my pronouns are he, him, and good boy. And so, I feel like a dog, and I get along with other animal lovers, and animal lovers are global. You don't want to see any harm come to animals anywhere. And this just can prevent so much pain and suffering of these animals, and then further the death of a lot of people. And so just talking about it, spreading the word, coming to our Facebook page or watching our documentary when it's ready, will be really, really big.
I know
When
I
is-
can.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of the documentary, when is it going to be ready? Do you have an idea on that yet?
Yeah, we're going to dinner tonight to talk about our latest draft of it. But we're going to do a private showing in early April 11th in Seattle. And then we're probably going to show it in late April in Vancouver at one of the main theaters here, again, privately. And then we're going to submit it to film festivals. And hopefully we can get some awareness at the film festivals. Again, I'm not trying to win any awards. Like I don't need to win Sundance. I just need people to get aware of this thing, right? And then the other part is that we're just started talks with people like the BBC. We're hoping Netflix will be interested, or Amazon Prime, or CBS, or someone who's got the breadth to be able to talk about this issue. And with that, when you just need one person who says, I got this, and they can take care of it, and so that's what the goal is spread the word, wake people up, and one person can just say, you know what, I'm going to take care of this problem, and it'll be done. That's what I'm hoping for.
I'm looking forward to watching the documentary. I mean, I won't put on any makeup that day, and I'll be prepared to like cry my eyes out as I'm watching this and just empathizing with everybody. And there were some very powerful clips even in the trailer of just what's going on in Ukraine, less the animals, and then you bring into the animal mix, and it's like it's heartbreaking, it's heart-wrenching, and you understand the importance immediately. And I'm very much looking forward to the documentary.
Well, every time I watch the cuts, I cry, and it's just weird because I'm not a crier, and I actually started crying when I was over there walking dogs, and I'd just be walking along, and it was really interesting. I was one place where it was a mound, and I was walking the dog like on the top of this mound, and I came across a little sign, and the sign was talking about that they had set up these 3 circular mounds and had put cannons in, and it was from like 1,000 years ago to protect them from Russia. And it was like to protect the town. And I didn't realize that we were walking along this like fortitude or whatever you call it. And I just started crying. I was just like, what is going on here? Like, why are we hurting all these people and these animals? And what is this for? It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's a movie that I definitely keep crying when I watch it.
Yeah, I cry every time I watch the trailer. And I consume most of my news through audio format, and so not intentionally, it's just what works for like my life. And so I don't get to see the visuals very often. And so the images of seeing the destruction and the suffering over there, it's so sad. Like it's just that amount of suffering just is so unnecessary, and it's kind of mind-boggling, like to your point, Dan, of like, why are we doing this to each other?
Yeah. Well, Liz, I don't know what. Yeah, it's unbelievable. In 2024, we still have war. We're still killing people, but I don't think people in North America are aware of what Russia is really doing to that country. I mean, they are flattening it, and it's not like he wants it, because why would he flatten all the like utilities and the mines and the industry and the airports? I mean, are being just flattened. If you wanted it, you'd keep those things so that you could use them, I guess, just kill the people. I don't know. But you know what got me, and I don't have any video of it, I have audio, but I was in a place called Izum, or Izum. They have like 3 different names for every place you go over there. So it's Izyum, and it's further south, and it was occupied for 6 months by the Russians. And we went and set up a clinic there. 80% of their town is gone. So I live in West Vancouver, 45,000 people. Same size, Izum, 45,000 people. Can you imagine? 80% gone. Hospitals, churches, schools, homes, flattened. On top of that, only 10,000 people left. 35,000 people had to leave, right? So then I stayed in a volunteer's home, a woman, probably my age. And this woman, like she had put all her carpets and rugs up on the windows to blacken it out. And she wrote on her fence that it was occupied so that like they wouldn't loot. And so she told me the story. First of all, she refused to let me sleep on the couch. She made me sleep in her bed while she took the couch. And I kept telling her, no, no. And finally, Christina's like, Dan, you're not going to win with the Ukrainian woman, just sleep in her bed. And then she made us dinner and breakfast. Like, this woman has nothing. And we brought food. And she's like, no, 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 I'm making you food. She lived in her basement for 6 months. And we're not talking like a basement like you or I have. We're talking like mud, dirt, banky, dark basement. She had collected some of the dogs that were running up and down the street. So she had 9 dogs in her backyard that she was feeding. And she said, the first wave came through and the Russians were like, we're going to take care of you. Everything's going to be fine. And then the next wave came and they just started bombing every minute and a half. And she said some of her neighbors committed suicide because they went crazy over this. One of her neighbors, an old woman, was raped. And then she said they sent in the Chechens and then they sent in some other nomadic tribes, because what Putin's doing is sending like he's cleaning out the jails and using them as soldiers. And then he's sending in the minorities that he wants to get rid of. And these people aren't trained, but they're so poor. She said that they were stealing toilets. They'd never seen a toilet before. So they were picking up toilets and looting them. And she said, but I asked her, and she said that she would run out to her garden and get food, and the gunships would be going overhead. And she said, as long as you didn't run, they wouldn't shoot you. And she also, for 6 months, didn't understand. She thought they cut off communication. She thought all of Ukraine had fallen. And so I said, well, why would you risk your life to help these dogs, in the backyard? I mean, you're really risking your life. And she said, they give me hope. Like hope had been taken away from her. And so she could help something that needed help, that was more, needed more help than a human. And it gave her hope. And I was like, wow, that's why I got to keep going, right? Like, she gave me hope.
I think that's amazing. And it reminds me of why some people bring their pets to like senior care facilities and things, because they say people live longer when they have pets and something to care for. And so I totally believe that if she has something and she can take care of them, and like you said, she doesn't have anything, right? I'm sure she's having a hard time getting food, yet she's figuring out how to take care of these dogs and feed them. And I'm sure it's helping her stay occupied as well and just kind of deal with the mental strain that war is. And I'm getting more of a visual as you're talking about this, and it just, my heart is breaking for what's going on over there.
Yeah, is absolutely right. And I think the running a dynamics practice helped me prepare for some of this, because you just go in and you go, wow, that's like, I would go into some companies like, they're screwed up. Like, how are we going to fix them? Oh my gosh, we need little cat A, little cat B, and little cat C, like to come and rescue this. And so that was kind of the way we approached this over there, which is, how do we put these pieces together, and how do we use technology, and how do we use just kind of human ingenuity to fix these things. And it's kind of cool. The Ukrainians are very bright, like technology wise, they're good. You can see it like with their drones, and they're outnumbered and outmanned and and they are using technology to help save the day there. And so I love that. I love that about the Ukrainians.
Well, I feel like that's a good segue too, back to kind of talking about the technology a little bit. But how did you start to come up with an AI platform that can match dogs back and help them find their owners again? This just sounds, it sounds so futuristic, but also so now, because of all the emphasis on AI in the technology community. And I'm just interested to learn more about how you guys figured that out and how you solved that.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So in 2000, I actually opened an office in Krakow, Poland. And we were building, so this is kind of right before this huge recession hit later on, but we set up a platform there. We had 85 Polish developers, And these guys are really good at distributed technology because they were under communism. So they never had powerful computers. So we actually built a bot platform, a collaborative intelligent agent platform to build and deploy bots and for good uses, right? And mostly in ERP. And that's how I met Doug Burgum from Great Plains, was he became interested in the platform and originally talked to us about buying us. And, because he thought, wow, we could use what you're doing with bots to help in ERP, to help with supply chains, to look at min-max systems and resupply, and then work collaboratively across other companies. So ERP systems would be able to safely talk to each other using these bots. And then we also had integrated what's called ontology, which is how computers can think. So ontology gives a common dictionary and thesaurus so that other companies will be able to, like, if I saw her duck, does that mean you saw a little duck like an animal, or she ducked because a ball was coming her way, right? So you give them a common platform and thesaurus and dictionary that can work across platforms, across corporations with these agents, these collaborative agents. So anyways, that's how I got into this whole kind of AI and stuff. And we did a patent back then, which expires in 2 years, but it was around collaborative agents and bots and also AI. And so anyways, what was interesting about that was my friend Gary, who does a lot of animal rescue and has his own dog place in the UK. He's the one that came up with, hey, we should do facial recognition. And I'm like, we can do that. And then we started researching it, and we reached out to a company out of Kyiv called InData, and they said, yeah, we can help you build that. We were doing something similar for insurance companies, pet insurance companies, because when you bring in a pet, it's not like it has a driver's license or it can ask its birthday. So they were using facial recognition to identify the pet to make sure it fit the insurance program, the insurance plan. So we talked to them, and then we introduced them to Ludia, the partner out of Portland that does a lot of CRM and F&O, a guy named Lucas Diaz. And he was like, I'll help you do this. That's really cool. Let's build this out. And he has been nonstop, benefiting us and been our patron, and I should call him a patron saint, actually. So if since the beginning, he's like, Dan, I'm all in, whatever you need, let's do it. And so his team has been helping us build that. We took it and showed it to Microsoft, and they liked it. And so it was like, yeah, no problem.
That's amazing. It's so creative. I just love the use of it, and like you said earlier, trying to take different pictures. I keep looking down because my dog's over here. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at her nose and like her unique identifier of her nose and the different pictures. Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
so interesting about dogs? I've learned so much during this whole couple of years because being involved in with all these vets and with all these animals and all that. Dogs can breathe in and out at the same time.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So and their noses are so amazing, and it's their way of telling time. They can tell something's been here, something's here, or something's coming. And it's like they use time through their nose and their smell. And it's just fascinating. So it snowed a lot here over the weekend. I took my dog down to the park, and someone had built a snowman, and he got down to the park and he froze and started barking at this snowman, and it freaked him out, and he wouldn't go any closer to it. And so I walked up and I hugged the snowman, and then he came over and I'm like, oh, okay.
Mine are afraid of snowmen too, or statues, or the like Halloween, like people will fill up like a pumpkin bag with leaves. They bark at all of that. They think it's all scary. And I'm like, you guys, like, it's not moving. It's not going to hurt you. It's fine. But that's funny. Yeah, I'm learning a lot from you about dogs today.
Well, here's the other thing. So like as a human, if you think about a dog, like they say a dog lives 7 years to every, or we have 7 years to every year they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right equation. Okay. So to us, a week or a day to us is a week to them. So for every day we live, it's a week for them. So I think that's why dogs have so much fun and are so sweet and loving, is because like that's a week, like they got to have fun every day. And so I try to think of that like, okay, I can have the same attitude.
That's such a great way to look at it. And it also makes me feel better about like when you leave them for 4 hours and why they act like you've been gone for 3 days. It's because
Yeah.
you have been.
That's right.
You left me forever,
You're right.
Mom.
Yeah, mine cries. I come in the house and he's like, he gets between your legs. You're like, I just went and took the trash out, man. You know?
I know, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm happy to see you guys too. Thanks.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, let's see. Do we want to circle back to any technology questions?
Well, the technology, you know, it actually was so easy. And that's what killed me about this thing, right? Because, you know, you can build all this stuff from scratch and try to come up with it, or you can just take something off the shelf and then you can just adapt it. Like we have, like when you think about CRM, usually for customer relationship management, but if you turn that C to an X and it becomes XRM, it can actually be anything, a dog and a cat, a shelter, a warehouse, whatever. And so we're able to manage all the dogs and the cats through our CRM platform. And, you know, we know when it was microchipped, we know who sterilized it, we know what vaccinations it's got, we've got its passport number, we've got all the photos in there. And then deploying it, and I was kind of, because I had retired right after the Power Platform was introduced, so I wasn't super familiar with it yet. But when they showed us how easy it was to deploy a web portal and do all this, and you know, and just expose what you wanted out of the CRM platform, out of the D365 platform, I'm like, wow. And so then field services kind of next, like how we can leverage that. Like, why recreate this? Let's just use what's out of the box and track, you know, okay, what veterinarians are doing, what vaccinations, where, and what supplies do they need? They're in the field, right? So how do we get them and how do we use the scheduling application? Just leverage what you've got out of the box. It doesn't make sense to write anything or write code to do that. It just makes it so simple. And the Ukrainian language is available, so you can just flip that on. You don't have to rewrite all the language codes.
That's amazing too, because that used to be a lot of work to try to get different languages embedded. In terms of, you mentioned before too that you go and catch these dogs, and then if they can't be adopted or aren't good candidates for adoption, or you're overflowing, and you take them back to where you found them or where their friends were, do you use any mapping technology to like keep track of where you found them?
Yeah, I mean, we just use GPS. So
Okay.
we take a photo of them with our phone, usually like an iPhone, right? And then we know how when you open up that photo, it has the location.
Yeah.
So then we just send a message into whoever, like the coordinator. Look, we just picked up this dog. We take a picture of the dog, and then it gives us the location. And then we put them in a cage, and we stick a little sticker on their head. It's kind of old-fashioned with a number. And then we take them in, and then we do the operations, and then we keep them for a couple of days, at least one day, you know, to let the wound heal. And then we'll take them back, and we use the GPS to do that. But we also take that GPS location and then send it up into the database, into the D365 database on Azure. And then that way, when someone matches with a dog, then we know where that dog is, or when we last saw that dog. Or if it was in a shelter, if we did the work in the shelter, we know what shelter it was in. And you know, to be just kind of forthright and honest with you, our database is too small, so we haven't actually reconnected a lot of people yet. We've done more adoptions than we have. It's more meant for when we get the money to go do the big, like when we can start doing 100,000 animals, then this makes sense. But for 8,000 animals, trying to get people all over Europe to use it just doesn't make sense yet.
Yeah, I'm sure, and a lot of them are still displaced, right? So I'm sure a lot of people still on their mind probably isn't, hey, I wonder what my dog's up to. Unfortunately, I'm sure they'll get to that point, but it might be a little ways out.
I don't know. I think they're heartbroken. I think they're wherever they
Yeah.
are. I think they're wondering about their dog and their cat, and they're just sick to death about it. I have a hero, a guy named Lewis from Atlanta. So the first time I went over there, you know, we were just in the local paper, but for some reason, this local paper was online everywhere, and people were calling me, going, you know, what can I do? How can I help? And this guy Lewis from Atlanta calls me up with this southern accent. He's like, hey, I'm coming to help you. What can I do for you? And you're like, you're coming here? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, get a van and bring a van full of dog food from Krakow or Warsaw, because you can buy it all cheaper there, like from a warehouse. So he shows up with this big van full of food, and I went, okay, let's unload it. So two old men unloading all this food in the warehouse. And I said, we're going to go back over, I know a pet store, we're going to buy and reload the van again, because the vans were going out to these shelters and to these, rescuers. So he reloads it, and then I could tell. I said, hey, have you had lunch? He goes, no. So I took him to the only restaurant I know that was decent over there. The food is, and not my taste, but okay. So anyways, we went to this one restaurant, and I got to know Lewis a little bit. And then a call came in, and it was a guy that said, hey, there's an old lady in Kharkiv right now. They're bombing like crazy over there. They're down in the subway, and she won't leave her German Shepherd, but her daughter wants her to come to Italy. Is there any way you can go get her? And I went, I can't, because I signed a commitment to the shelter that I would be staying there, and working from, I had to check in at 7 at night and then leave at 6 in the morning to go to the other sanctuary and walk. So I had signed a commitment for a month. So I can't drive to Kharkiv. That's, 14 hours away. So I looked at Lewis and I said, hey, do you want to do this? And he was like, I can't. And so then we walked out of the restaurant. I could tell something was wrong with him. And he shook his head. He goes, okay, I'll do it. And he left the next morning. He sent me the video of the bullet holes, the shrapnel holes in the side of his van when the Russian jets flew over him. He hid, with he was with two other people, and they hid, and they didn't get hurt. But he got to Kharkiv, found this woman, got her and her German Shepherd, drove her all the way back and down to Italy to her daughter, and then back to me. And I'm like, man, that's my hero, that guy.
Wow.
But she would not leave her German Shepherd, this old lady. Wouldn't leave.
Well, especially if it's just the two of them. It's like, this is my friend, this is my child, this is my person. You know what I mean? This is my partner. It's like
your only
they are
companion
connected.
Yes. System at that point. Yeah.
It's like Sophie's Choice, that old book. It is really, and you think about it. It's like, what would you do? Especially if you have children, right? Do you take your children, or you take your pet? Or do you leave your pet and stay with it, or what's your choice here? It is a very difficult situation and completely unnecessary, because why is Russia doing this?
Yeah
I don't have an answer.
No, it's what, from your experience working with the Ukrainian people over there, what's their general sentiment about everything that's going on? Just like heartbreak, bewilderment? How are they kind of coping with everything?
Yeah, like I hear these people in the US, or some people like, oh, I'm weary of the war over there. It's like, imagine being Ukrainian. We're going into our third year. Their economy is totally disrupted. Their unemployment. You do see alcoholism. You see drug use. There's a lot of depression going on. And how do you deal with this? I did ask, a number of people, and I think the best one answer I heard was, they think that they don't even know why. They're like, why are they doing this? We don't want to be part of them. We don't want their life. And like, if you've been to Ukraine, you go downtown Kiev, there's a Tiffany's. People are driving Lexuses, and they have a decent, most Ukrainians have a decent life.
Or they did before this.
That's right. And so woman explained to me that she thinks that Putin is like a domestic violence guy, like a husband or a boyfriend for domestic violence. And Ukraine used to be married to Russia, but Russia was always the top. And so he just wants to punish like his ex-wife and just pummel her for no reason except for his own his demented, domestic violence attitude. That's kind of what they think. It's the only reason I can think of it. Like, why else would they do it? But yeah, the sentiment over there is it's like, they will fight to the end. I can't believe, like, they're like Christina. She was ready to join the military, and her friend Luda called me and said, Christina's going to join. And I called Christina and said, hey, I can't let you do that. the fatality rate is too high, and you are gifted as animal rescuer. You should stay and do that. I mean, the animals need you. And so she decided to focus on animal rescue instead of joining the military. But she was ready to fight for her country. Still is.
She
She
arguably,
is.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
she is fighting for her country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
she
in
is.
a different way.
Yeah. Kind of sad too, like they disrupt, the Russians disrupt GPS over there. And I didn't, you learn all this stuff. First of all, don't trust Google Maps when you're driving in a war zone. So because they have like avoid tolls, avoid highways, but not avoid war zones, right? And so
Maybe they should add that in.
yeah, or minefields or whatever.
Yeah.
We need to add that in. But one time we were finished late at night because you work long hours, and I was driving the van, and after about an hour and a half, Christina's like, pull over. And so I pull over, and she's like, give me your phone. And so she's looking at my phone, and she goes, where did you go? And I said, I used Google Maps, and I used the shortest route. And she's like, you took us to the front line. And she said, you don't understand. She goes, you're American. They will trade for you. Me, they're going to rape and kill. And I said, so what do you want to do? And do you want to turn around? I mean, it would take us a really long time to go back around. And the roads aren't good and it's dark. And I said, I'm happy to do that. No problem. She goes, let's go forward and see what happens. And so because the front line changes every day, right? They're fighting. And so we got to a checkpoint, and fortunately it was Ukrainian. And he said, yeah, you're lucky. So we went through the checkpoint, and then we got back, another hour or so back to where we were staying. But they jammed the GPS signals, which is an American technology. They have their own, Russians have their own GPS that they use. So when you're over there, you can't trust your GPS signal because it could take you completely the wrong way. And you also just can't trust Google Maps when you're over there, is what I learned. I heard she's like, rookie mistake.
Dumb American, come on. Yeah.
Rookie.
The things we take for granted here. I mean, I just continue to be kind of in shock, and just, being in North America, the United States, and Canada, like, we've never, I mean, you've been over there, but like, I've never experienced anything near as scary as what you're describing. And it's amazing, the like toughness and perseverance and the bravery that the Ukrainians have to continue to, like Christina, like go forward and see what happens, and just having the courage to live through that and keep, I don't know, here's humanity in it, even though it's so hard, is that people are stepping up and helping and, doing good in spite of everything that's happening.
I come back and I go to my dog. He's here right now. I'm just petting he likes me to scratch his butt. So I'm sitting here scratching his butt, But I go, you're so spoiled. You're so spoiled compared to like what these dogs are living through, or cats, They have it pretty good, and they should have it good. Dogs, we spent 8,000 years domesticating them, right? And so now they're not prepared to go back into the wild and live on their own. And so we owe it to them to help them. That's at least my feeling.
I love that
agree.
feeling. And I like to remind my dogs periodically as well about how spoiled they are, and that other dogs out there are not as lucky as them. And so I'll go give them a big squeeze tonight after this, and remind them even more so, when they don't want to go outside because it's raining. And
Right.
I'll have to tell them, like, there are dogs that are outside that are getting bombed.
Yeah, that's right. My dog, I'm gonna put booties on you so it's your feet or your paws are okay in the snow.
Right.
Yeah.
Get you your heated blanket because you're shivering.
Yeah.
We love our dogs. Well, all right, Dan, I know we're kind of coming up on our time here. Was there anything else you wanted to share? You've shared a lot.
Yeah, well, unfortunately I won't be continuing UORF. And I think I told you about that. So I came back from my last mission and discovered that I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So I've been going for treatment, and we start chemo tomorrow. So party begins, and we'll see how that goes. But
Good luck.
They call pancreatic cancer the Al Qaeda cancer. So it's a And today was kind of fun because I went in for a biopsy where they're doing, like, it's the Rolls Royce of genetic marking, and they do your DNA and your mRNA and all that. It won't be available for about 8 weeks, but it was really cool. I got to watch the ultrasound as they put the needle in, and I got to see the enemy, right? And then when they pull it and they put it in a freezer. And so she actually, when I got up, she showed it to me, the actual sample. So I got to actually see the cancer, which is kind of cool to see the enemy and I'm like, man, I'm coming for you tomorrow, But I do feel a little bit like Ukraine versus Russia. Like, this thing just invaded me all by surprise. And frankly, I'm outnumbered and outgunned right now. But I think if I'm smart enough, we're smart enough, we can take it on. And I'm just grateful for everything.
I wish you the best of luck. That's a very hard journey to go through as well. And good luck with your chemo. And I love your attitude about it too, to be able to see that, to say that, oh, it was really cool to be able to see everything. I kind of enjoy seeing that stuff too, but
I did name one of my tumors Putin.
I saw that post. I appreciate your sense of humor and just your whole perspective on it. I cannot imagine. I've had grandparents die of cancer and have experienced that as a grandchild, but cannot imagine having to go through that myself. And just, I don't know, it's inspirational, your outlook and just, your perspective on it. But the tumor naming, I laughed pretty hard at. I appreciated that.
I have had a really, really good life and a great ride, and so I'm grateful for everything. And we'll just make the last part of the journey as fun as we can. And I think that's the way to do it. Don't be like a dog. Every day is like a week.
Yeah. And they live in the moment. They're so present. They don't worry about the future or worry about the past. Like, dogs just live in the moment. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I promise you, I'm not going to go around sniffing people's butts. So I won't do that.
I mean, hey, you're welcome to do whatever you want, but I don't suggest that.
I get arrested for that.
Well, Dan, is anyone going to be taking over UWARF from you? Is that kind of the hope? Do you want someone to? What do you see the future of UWARF as?
Yeah, I don't think anyone is, and I think that what we'll do is we'll get this documentary out. It's kind of the big thing, and my hope is that someone in the EU or someone that has that kind of passion will just jump in and do it, right? And there are lots of great volunteers in Ukraine. There are a lot of people doing this kind of work. And so there's lots of opportunity to just, work with them and get it going. But yeah, I actually don't even have the time to focus to help someone take over. So my big thing right now is, I got to focus on my health and these treatments. I never realized how busy cancer is. I mean, I get blood twice a day, a biopsy. I got to go for acupuncture with the nursing team and the doctor team already. And then I'm going to go meet with the documentary team tonight. And so I've got to focus on those two things, my health and this documentary, and then hope that the documentary will just change some people's minds and open their eyes, and someone will be like, that's my passion, and I'll go do it.
And we're here. I love that. And we're here to help. We'll share out this podcast as much as we can and hope that it sheds some light on what you're doing as well. And we're hoping that it reaches a wide audience, because we'd love to see your mission get followed through on here.
Absolutely. Yeah,
well, I'm grateful for both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, on where the documentary airs and when it's live to the public, and we'll definitely help spread the word.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here today, Dan. We sincerely appreciate your visit. Any other remarks before we close out?
Oh, just give your dog and your cat a hug, and your loved ones. That's all.
We will. Yeah,
we will.
And we'll be sending prayers and positive vibes your way, and hope for all the best for you, and that you have a long time left and high quality of life and are enjoying every moment. You're truly inspirational, and I've learned a lot, and thanks for sharing everything today with us and our listeners.
There's one upside of cancer. I can eat as much as I want. I'm eating like crazy.
And you're losing weight, right?
I'm losing weight, but I want to overeat because they do chemo based on your weight. So I'm like putting rocks in my pockets and stuff, you know, and eating up because go on. But let's go, baby. We're gonna take you on.
Enjoy it while you can, in case you get nauseous. So enjoy all your food right now.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah.
All right. See you later.